Hi, everybody. I'm Amy, the Reluctant Disney Adult, and welcome to the first ever Reluctant Disney Adult Fastcast. Now, what is a Fastcast, you might say? Well, it's just a podcast, and we're going to put, images and stuff over it. But you know, Fastcast sounds creative and it sounds like it's a Disney reference, so that's what we're going with.
It sounds like something that Disney would charge you an extra $20 for, yeah.
Yes, it does. As of yet, we're not going to charge you an extra $20 to listen to our Fastcast, but we reserve that right in the future if it becomes popular. Uh, anyway, as I said, I'm Amy. I'm the host of this Fastcast, uh, and I've been the voice of all of the Reluctant Disney Adult videos to date. Um, yes, even that video that Anya was on, which doesn't technically count. Um, as having a co-host. So to celebrate our first Fastcast, we do have a co-host here. Um, my my wife, Cora. How are you doing, Cora?
Hi, I'm Cora. I think the nickname we've come up with is the Reluctant Disney Wife. And to
Yeah.
be clear, I am reluctant about the Disney part, not a reluctant wife. Um, just a little bit about me. I would say that for most of my life, Disney had played like a normal relationship. Like I've seen most of the movies, but I haven't seen like Home on the Range or Brother Bear. And I had never been to Disney World, never been to Disneyland. And I had always thought that, Disney adults were a little, hmm. And then I met a lady who I fell in love with, and we were dating like a year, and then we started living together, and I found out that she was a Disney adult. And it caught me by surprise. When Amy would not stop watching videos of people walking through Disney World or like guys in Hawaiian shirts talking about like, what's up for Tokyo Disneyland. Um, and I still don't love Disney, but I love Amy. And so I have endeavored to be more open. But when we went to Disney World last year, I kept calling it Disneyland.
Yes, he did. Um, and I tried not too often to correct you on that. Um,
I honestly kept forgetting. It's not, I wasn't doing it on purpose. It wasn't a bit. I literally couldn't remember what the difference was.
no, that's fair. Um, Anyway, what are we doing here? You introduced yourself.
Hmm.
Uh, if this sounds a little rough, I will point you back to that. This is our first ever episode. We're just kind of flying by the seat of our pants here. So, um,
I'm wearing a dress.
okay, we're flying by the dress. I
Okay.
don't know how you would adjust that, but
Sorry. Sorry.
but yeah. So I think we've given an introduction. So since this is our first episode, and since we got our co-host Cora here, we were thinking what would be the appropriate first topic. And since you mentioned Cora that a year ago, in fact, a year ago today, we were leaving from our trip to Disney World to come back home. I figured that, I mean, we figured that it would be a good idea to talk about our trip to Disney World last year. Now I know, I think I did a video, uh, the first the first episode, not counting the introduction video. We talked about uh, Walt Disney World uh, in it, And some of that was based upon the recent trip that we had taken, but we didn't really talk specifics about that trip. And certainly only, I mean, even though some of the elements of, I don't know, I was doing kind of a joy and disgust thing with, at one point, kind of sounded like one that was really amped up about Disney World, and one that was not so much. Definitely took some of your observations for that character who wasn't necessarily the biggest fan of things, but also my
A
own.
little bit,
I
a little
mean,
bit, yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, and you're not purely like a fangirl.
no. I mean, that's why the name of this video channel is The Reluctant Disney Adult. There's a reluctance there for reasons. We don't have to go into, though. That's not really the point of this episode.
Is it because the Disney company is evil?
Well, I mean, as evil as any company is, so.
Okay.
But anyway, yeah. So we're going to talk about our trip to Disney World. And of course, like so many through the history of the 50 some years, at this point of Walt Disney World, we did the traditional road trip down to from where we live to Disney World. Um, Now, since I grew up in the Midwest, every time that our family would go down to Disney World, we went uh, through like Tennessee, Georgia, um, that area, and on I-75. So that was my primary experience growing up, and as an adult, even driving down to Orlando was along I-75 and the Florida Turnpike. Um, so that was my experience. Now, since we live in the Northeast, we went down on I-95, which was a new experience for me. Large swaths of it I'd never been on, certainly, and I can't speak for Cora, but so we went, and turns out there's not an awful lot south of Richmond to like keep attention of your eyes on the road. There's a whole, you're just basically driving through pine trees and occasional small cities in the Carolinas. Uh, wasn't exactly the most scenic or most interesting drive, was it?
A lot of billboards for Jesus in case he's not someone that you're familiar with. What was that rodent themed store?
Oh yes, Buc-ee's.
Bucky's. Yes, there were a lot of Bucky's advertisements. Um,
And
I said recently that, like I really wanted to go to Bucky's, and you looked at me and you were like, "No, you did not."
yeah, you did not want to go to Buc-ee's. In fact, you got on me because I kept doing a little bit every time we saw a Buc-ee's billboard.
Was there a voice? Did you do a Bucky's voice? I can't remember now.
I might have done a little voice. To be fair, there were a lot of Buc-ee's billboards, so yeah, we should have stopped at Buc-ee's. Like it seems to be like obviously if you're from Texas and you're watching this or listening to it, you're probably very familiar with Buc-ee's. But also they do have a few on the way down from the northern states to Florida
Mm-hmm.
along I-95. I think they may have a couple on I-75 too. Um, so it's also a Walt Disney World, like a lot of road trippers will stop at Buc-ee's because of the novelty of it.
Mm-hmm.
Because again, if you live outside of Texas,
Who
you've
the hell's
never heard
ever?
of those.
Yeah.
It's like Midwesterners coming out to the Northeast and seeing Wawas. Um,
Mm-hmm.
it's like I thought those were fictional or something, but Yes, that's something we do here is talk about regional convenience stores. So
Absolutely. In a few episodes, I'm going to do a long disquisition on Come and Go in the Midwest.
that's fair. I don't know. Like I spent most of my time driving and most of my time my feet hurting a lot because I was wearing sandals that sucked during a good part of it. What was your impression of the trip down, Cora?
My impression is that, like you, like the southern states were pretty boring for most of it. And I remember we spent one night in Georgia, South Georgia maybe. And um what just happened?
Oh, I'm sorry. I had to release the creative consultant from the
Oh,
room.
okay. Okay.
Okay, so Cora, what was your impression of the trip through to Disney World?
So south of Richmond through the Carolinas, super boring. We stayed overnight in, I want to say, southern Georgia, middle of Georgia, and it was like the most generic exurb dystopia that you could imagine.
Yeah, it was Savannah. I don't remember the name of
Right.
it.
Right. Just like dull as dishwater. And then and nothing, it just seemed like things were getting warmer, but like nothing was really changing from where we live, in terms of like climate or anything. And then when you cross into Florida, then it's like, oh, this is very different. This is a very different place. These are very different trees. Everything's very different. Um, I mean, the other thing that I should mention, and this is going to come up, I imagine, a lot on this show, is I am autistic and I have a number of sensory issues. And I'm also like not my best when my routine gets interrupted. And so, like, to some degree, there's something about long road trips that I'm a little crabby anyway. This is why it seems like a good idea to me now to go to the Buc-ee's, but by hour, like, what was it, like 9 of that road trip, I was like, no, 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 no. So that was also part of the vibe.
Yeah, I can see that. By the way, it was Pooler, Georgia, is where we stayed, a suburb
Cool.
of Savannah. Yeah.
All right. And I say this with love for anyone listening who's from Cooler, Georgia. It's where hope goes to die. I I don't actually mean that. I don't know anything about where you live. I just
It's
know that
it's
it's a very boring.
it's Pooler with a P.
It's Pooler?
Yes.
Pooler? Okay.
And I do say that they had a Culver's, which was a nice taste of the Midwest. So
That is nice. I do like.
yeah, and it it sounds like we're trashing the Carolinas. That's not really my intention. It's just
I'm
I've
okay.
been to places in South Carolina and North Carolina that are gorgeous, that are a lot of fun,
Mhm.
a lot that are great to be at. The I-95 corridor, just driving on I-95 through the Carolinas, is not
Yeah.
one of those places. It's just not. I mean, I come from Illinois. There are a lot of places in Illinois that are even worse. I mean, as bad or even worse to drive along because of how boring it is. So,
Hmm.
um, that's just the nature of interstate driving in general, unless like you're driving through the mountains, or along the ocean or something like that. So, but yeah, that was kind of my impression. I definitely enjoyed the trip more once we left Pooler through Georgia and Florida. Even, having to deal with driving on the interstates in Florida, which is Well, it's interesting. It's a lot of fun if you like fearing for your life kind of situation. Although, honestly, to be fair, maybe it was because we were driving on a Sunday and we skipped the part between Orlando, I mean, Universal Studios and Disney World.
Mm.
I-4 didn't seem too bad when we were driving on it, but it's got a pretty bad reputation. I know that much. Eventually, we got down to to Orlando, and because even though we weren't stopping there, I kind of wanted to give Cora the feel of being in Orlando, which meant getting off on the exit so we could drive by Universal Studios, not on I-4, but to drive onto like the road that goes by Universal Studios, and then ultimately connects with International Drive, so that we could then drive down International Drive to eventually get ourselves to Disney World. And of course, if you know the Orlando area, you've been there on trips or whatever, you know what I-Drive is, International Drive. It's this touristy area, like the Orlando, like the convention centers along there, SeaWorld's along there, Universal Studios is on one end. Disney World is not on I-Drive, but like it's not too far to connect to Disney World on the other end of International Drive. So like there's hotels and chain restaurants, and even to this day still a bunch of those stores that sell like knockoff t-shirts for cheap, and all those kinds of things. It's still a pretty very touristy area. It's very similar if you've been to Gatlinburg. It's kind of like that to a certain degree. Pigeon Forge, um, another big touristy area, kind of like that. So yeah, I mean, we drove along there, which I mean, I was driving along there because I kind of wanted to check it out to see what it was like, and I was kind of surprised by how similar it is in places, even though it's definitely different in a lot of places. Of course, we stopped at some restaurant. I don't remember the name of it. It's like a Italian restaurant. I think it's a chain, but I don't remember its name. Um, we stopped there for lunch before we went to Disney because we stayed on property, so we were waiting, kind of trying to kill some time once we got in to make sure our room would be ready for us.
Yeah, and I remember that being a good Italian restaurant, first of all. But
Was
also the other thing that I remember is that uh that was the day when my legs cramped up so much I was having trouble walking because you had been very responsible and stretching, like every so often to get a break, and I was not. And it was like a sudden reminder that I am in my 40s now. You know, I have to be a little bit more cognizant of that because yeah, I was like, oh my God, I can barely walk. So that was a fun hour or two.
Yeah, I remember that. Like for a while, I was worried that we were going to have to go to like urgent care or emergency room or something. But
Well, you didn't say that to me.
no, like I wasn't like it wasn't like, oh no, we're going to have to go there. That was, like catastrophizing type,
Mm-hmm.
catastrophizing, not catastrophe. I don't know why I said it that way, but and yeah, but then I mean, once it was clear that once you walked on it, you were starting to feel better, feel looser, and that then I worried less. But
Mm-hmm.
anyway, it was a good place. I'm glad we ate there, but
Mm-hmm.
so we drove down I-Drive, and then by doing that, I decided I wanted to give Cora the big Disney World experience, and made sure that we went through Main Gate. So we went down to the Earl of Bronson Parkway, US 192, and drove across I-4 and drove up got off on the exit on 192 for the Disney World main gate. So we went through with the big Disney World, the archway that's over it, with Minnie and Mickey on flanking the road, welcoming you to Walt Disney World. And I don't know, what was your impression as we drove into Walt Disney World?
I remember thinking that it was like you were entering a separate country. Like the scale of it, I had never really appreciated from the outside. Like from my impression, never having been there, was, oh, it's an amusement park. I've been to amusement parks. This is a Disney amusement park. And then when you go in there, the scale of it, the size of the plot of land, and like the infrastructure, the fact that it has its own monorail and its own bus system and its own ride share and its own this thing and that thing, probably its own strategic nuclear deterrence initiative. Like it's all, there's so much in there, and that's kind of staggering, you know.
Yeah,
And I remember feeling kind of a little bit in awe, honestly.
yeah, it's if you've never been there, yeah, the scale of it is, or if you've only ever been to Disneyland, which I've never been to Disneyland either. Um, but I know that Disneyland is, I mean, it's the two parks and a couple three hotels. Um, Compared to Disney World, which is the size of the city of San Francisco. Or the other measurement they like to use is twice the size of Manhattan Island. So um yeah, so it's huge. It's miles between parks, which is why it has all that transportation. And yeah, it kind of to me feels like when you drive in there and you see like the big landmarks around in that, it feels like you're in like a, I don't know, like an enclave in the middle of a country like the Vatican or something like that. Although honestly, I think it's
Probably
bigger
bigger
than the
than the
Vatican.
Vatican. Yeah.
Even though I've been there, like there's a feeling when you drive in and just the immensity of it. And probably being a little giddy from the road trip, which had kind of taken its toll on both of us at that point. But
Hmm.
there definitely was a giddiness, I remember. Especially when we took a wrong turn, we ended up going into the Epcot parking lot and having to talk to the guy and say we made a wrong turn. I mean, obviously not the first time he's had to do that.
Sure.
No, that was to me that was a really exciting moment too. I think too because I got to show you like the scale of it, like
Hmm.
because you don't appreciate it until you've been there. Like you can hear the number, oh, it's the size of the city of San Francisco and twice the size of Manhattan Island, and then you experience it. I don't know. It's just it's
It's wild.
it's wild, yeah. So anyway, we checked into our hotel, which was the Caribbean Beach Resort. Which the Caribbean, I'm going to say this right here. The Caribbean Beach Resort gets a lot of shit. I hear it on YouTube. It's and it's never like it's garbage or it's bad. It's just that yeah, it is big. Um and it doesn't have an elevators, which does suck. If you're on the second floor, no matter how tired you are, you have to drag yourself upstairs every time.
Hmm.
Which we didn't. We had a first floor room. It was fine. And we were able to get a room that was pretty close to the Skyliner, which I'm going to be honest was one of the biggest drivers for me wanting to go to visit Disney World was because this Skyliner was something that honestly I didn't even know they had
Mm-hmm.
up until last year. Like I kind of maybe knew that it, but uh, anyway, the Skyliner, of course, is like aerial tram. I don't know what you call that. Like a
Like a
it's kind of like
ski lift, kind of.
yeah, kind of like that. Kind of like the Skyway that used to be at Magic Kingdom and Disneyland.
Mm-hmm.
But much nicer, much like not as sketchy feeling as those as the Skyway felt. And it's a transportation method that takes you through I mean, from uh, a few of the resorts, but also to Hollywood Studios and Epcot, uh, which is really convenient. I really liked writing it. Now I don't have as much of. I mean, I think if you're scared of writing in like the suspended skyway type rides, ski lift type rides, it can be probably a little scary,
It
but
does sway a little bit. Um, I have a mild fear of heights, and I generally did not have a problem, except every now and then they would stop the cart while you were suspended in midair, and then it's just like kind of rocking back and forth, and then it's just enough time for your mind to start to dream up exciting possibilities, let's say that.
yeah, yeah, I get that. But anyway, kind of rambling off here. We checked into the Caribbean beach. I mean, I mean, we used the digital check-in, like we didn't actually go to the office and check in. And we got into the room, and we had a little bit bigger room, I think, than normal rooms because we had a corner room. So the corner was rounded off instead of like there's like I don't know, like the room, there's like a little bit of space cut in those Caribbean beach rooms. Um, so that if you weren't in a corner room, it's a little bit more cramped. It still would have been fine because it was just us two in a king bed room. So um, I don't know. What did you think of the room?
I like the room a lot. Um, I felt like the accommodations were very good.
Yeah. They were nice. I thought that they were nicely themed without being like, over the top themed. They weren't themed to any like IP or anything like that. They were just kind of had I guess, Caribbean beach theme to it. But
Right. I think I would have rolled my eyes a little bit if there was like Little Mermaids everywhere and everything. Um, but like, yeah, I thought that was a very comfortable room. I thought it was very nice. And there was plenty of space.
yeah. It was a nice room. Um, and I mean, we didn't spend like, well, I mean, you spent more time in the room than I did, but
Mm-hmm.
it was a nice place. Like if I had spent more time in there, I think it would have been fine too. Um, again, it was bigger than some of the rooms. Like I think the value resort rooms are smaller. Uh, but yeah, it was nice. Anyway, we went to the food court, I think that night to eat. Like we had talked about going to Disney Springs, but we were both so
We were exhausted.
we were wiped. Yeah, and so we just went. I think I got a burger or something. I don't remember. Um, it was fine. It was good.
Mm-hmm. Generally, the food at Disney World was very good. I don't know that that was super memorable. That whatever we ate on the first night, because
Oh no,
I can't remember what it was, to be honest.
no, it was just standard food court type. I don't know, pizza. I think they had pizza. I think they had a few dishes. that were like Caribbean themed, but then they
Mhm.
had the usuals like chicken tenders and cheeseburgers and that kind of stuff. So
Mhm.
pretty typical Disney resort quick service. Um, especially for the value and moderate resorts. Anyway, I remember that I was considerably more enamored by the fireworks that were going off at Epcot as we were walking back,
I do remember that. Yes.
which I mean, kind of fits.
Uh,
Uh,
Just occurs to me in this episode, I'm gonna come off as like quite a grouch to what I assume is your rabid Disney loving audience.
I don't think you were a grouch. I think you were just very tired
Right.
and I would imagine that I mean Disney World is kind of a sensory like even in the best of places it can be kind of a sensory mess.
Yeah, that is true. Although Disney in the daytime is the sensory experience is overwhelming for me. Um, Disney at night and like at the resorts, like at the Caribbean, like when we were like near our room, is actually really nice. That was always my experience. I think maybe it's the like when it was a little bit hotter and like you had the bright Florida sun. I think that was maybe getting to me. That was yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it was definitely getting to me too. Like it was not a coincidence that some of my favorite times on that trip happened once the sun went down. And
Yeah, complete same. Um, like, and the other thing is because it's like the most magical place on earth, they want to make everything magical, and that means they want to put like little like filigrees in everywhere, like, and that usually just means sensory overload for me, like particularly in the middle of the day with the sun kind of beating down on you.
yeah, which I mean, I feel that's a nice segue to day one of the trip. I mean, day one, the first full day of our trip at Disney, which we decided since we got in on a Sunday, then we checked out on a Friday, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. So we only had 4 days. And that meant because I was going down and I wanted to be go, go, go with the trip. Our package that we bought were 4 day trip for the 4 days we were there were 4 day tickets,
Mm-hmm.
which meant that I wanted to go to all four parks one day apart for each park. Uh, now, keep in mind, this was 2023. Uh, back then, because they were still in their pandemic mode, post-pandemic mode with you had to make park reservations regardless of whether you were annual pass or you were down there for specific dates or whatever. So we had to when I made the reservation, when I bought the package for us, we had to set which days we wanted to be at which park. Um,
Mm-hmm.
whereas as of this year, January 9th, I think they started uh, if you're on a date based tickets, you don't have to reserve at all. And also, park hopping didn't start until 2 o'clock last year. So it forced us to be kind of set in which parks we were planning to go to
Mm-hmm.
in a way that if we did that trip this year, I don't think we would have been quite so worried about having the day set. We would have been much more flexible and kind of just rolling with it. And also, I think if I had to do it over again, we would have gotten 3-day tickets instead of 4-day tickets and made sure we had one day where we did not go to a park. Because I think it would have worked better for us. Especially since my feet were basically shot because of those sandals.
Yeah.
Yeah. But anyway, day one, we're at Epcot. And I have a feeling that some of you, if you're watching this and have any experience with Disney trips, are probably like, oh no, why are you doing Epcot on the first day? And that's a good point because Epcot is the biggest of the parks. It also has no shade pretty much anywhere. And we had the brilliant idea that we were going to rope drop and do the Ratatouille ride because, you know, the Skyliner, we get on the Skyliner, it drops you off right there at the International Gateway, which is there between the UK and France. And France is where the Ratatouille ride that was built, the new ride. That's a copy of the ride that originally was built at the Disney Studios park in France. And so, I mean, Ratatouille is my favorite movie. I wanted to see that ride, and it's a popular ride. It still is a popular ride. So we decided, well, we rope dropped, but in the sense that we were in the park, I think, before official opening time, but we were there much later than when people were starting to line up for the ride because it was already an 85-minute wait by the time we got into the park.
Yeah, yeah. The line was about as long as the movie Ratatouille.
Yeah. Um, and I mean the ride was fun. The wait was not, especially with my feet already being shot.
Yeah.
And I don't think I had foolishly, I don't think I had applied moleskin that morning. I would learn that lesson and I'd have a much better time the next few days. But so my feet were hurting. Um, and again, it was an enjoyable ride, but it was not a ride that I would ever wait 85 minutes again to ride.
No, no. Yeah, I enjoyed the ride too, but it was like that was just kind of a lot. And also I
Yeah.
think coming from what was basically still pretty wintry weather where we live to the way the weather is in Florida. Yeah, I think that was also something that was getting to us both. Um,
Yeah, and I mean it was morning time, but it was starting to get warm pretty quickly.
right.
Because those days until like the last day or so, the last day was nicer, I remember, especially at night. It was actually kind of got a little chilly at night the last day, but the first days, especially that first day, was awful.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, it was sunny and it was warm, and it was in that way that being in Florida when it's sunny and warm can be. So yeah, we rode the Ratatouille ride, and then we got a late breakfast at Leal.
Which I
The
remember enjoying. I remember it being a nice breakfast.
Yeah, it was a good breakfast. I mean, that was a place that I got from watching all those videos and stuff, and that was a good recommendation. I mean, it was good food. It's not too expensive, and um, I probably wouldn't have gotten the hot coffee considering how warm it was. That was not necessarily a lot of fun.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but you live and learn, I suppose. And anyway, the second part of this that kind of was causing problems was I had made a fixed plan in that I had reserved for us the Inside the Seeds tour, or whatever it is. It's the behind the scenes tour at Living with the Land in the
Right.
Land Pavilion, which, if you have a chance and you're not completely shot, like your feet, and you're not like dehydrated or whatever, so, like just feeling the effect of the heat too much, maybe, I highly recommend it. It's a really neat tour. It's like $35 extra, something like that. But I mean, you get it, you're taken through, they talk about all the plants, all the research and stuff that's going on in there. They give you free cucumber slices grown in their research areas. Um, and you can take pictures with there's a big like topiary type. There's a pepper plant or something that's like shaped like a Mickey, like has the Mickey ears and everything. It's like one of the oldest plants or the oldest plant currently growing there. You can have your picture taken with it, and like you can feed the fish in the part where the fish are. It's a really neat experience, but it's also one that it's hard to appreciate when your feet really hurt and you're like on the verge of needing to sit down lest you collapse. Anyway, we had that was set and we had to be there at a certain time, which meant
Mhm.
that we had to walk. And if you walk from the France pavilion to the land, if you've been at Epcot, you know there is no shade along there. You are walking out in the sun the entire way between the two pavilions. And we got there just in time. And Cora, you decided that it was not for you.
I think I wasn't aware that it was a walking tour until fairly close to when we actually got there.
Okay, yeah.
And at that point, I was like, I don't know if I could spend another 20 minutes on my feet. Uh, yeah, and I was also like, by then, like the worst day for me in terms of like sensory overload was definitely that first day. You know, like the little canned music that's everywhere and the sun and everything, you know, and there's so many people.
Yeah.
Um, and I was also a little bit catastrophizing that, you know, like, oh, I'm gonna ruin this trip for Amy, you know, like this is so important to her, and I can't like just enjoy Disney World like a normal human being, you know, like I was really going through it. So yeah, so I think um I feel like we had like a kind of a mild we had like a mild tiff before the tour and then it really happened after the tour.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, we're getting to that part. And I know one of the things that was kind of in play here is kind of the conflicting concept of vacations between the two of us.
Mm-hmm.
Um, like you have kind of, I think you kind of take more of a relaxed view. Like you go somewhere and you may do things, but there's also a bit more of kind of just relaxing and kind of just being there and taking it slower. Whereas kind of my concept from our vacations growing up, and then I continued it long after I grew up and was starting to travel on my own, was you get there and you do things from when you get up to when you go to bed, basically, and
Mm-hmm.
you're just kind of hitting that, uh, which kind of plays into my style of how I try to do the Disney trips too. Not that I was doing rope drop to closing. I only did that basically one day. Because that's the only one day that I could do it. The other days I was not in shape to do that. But if I were there and it was by myself, there's a good chance that I would have gotten up at like 6 in the morning and gotten out to a park and I would have been there till closing or at least close to closing.
Mm-hmm.
Um, because that's just the way that I kind of roll with vacations.
Yeah, you're definitely a person who like you want to do all the things. And I'm like, I'm on vacation. I want to sleep in. I want to like, goof off. Why am I doing this highly scheduled thing?
Yeah. So that was definitely at play, but yeah, I mean it. Anyway, I think where some of you, I mean, if you watch the video, we kind of allude to it. Uh, the episode 1 on Disney World alludes to it, crying at the land. We got into the trademark couple fight at Disney World, which, from my understanding, is
A
kind
rite of
of
passage.
a what?
A rite of passage.
Yeah, it's kind of a rite of passage, kind of like shopping at an IKEA together type situation.
It's like the fight we had when we were putting together the bed frame. Yeah.
Yeah, it's one of those things. And I mean, it was just perfect. It was a perfect storm type of thing, like the sensory stuff, the weather, the feet hurting, uh, and it was the right place. Like if it was at Journey into Imagination, and I'm like, okay, you were waiting. Now let's go ride Journey into Your Imagination with Stitch or whatever it's called. And Cora's like, no, we
Mm-hmm.
weren't going to get in a fight on that. But I wanted to go ride Living with the Land with Cora,
Mm-hmm.
which Living with the Land is one of my favorite rides, because I'm one of those nerds.
Mm-hmm.
It's not the thrilling rides, not the roller coasters. I want to ride the People Mover and Living with the Land when I go to Disney World. So, and from my perspective, like I got out there and I assumed that we were going to do that. Regardless of what the time was, I think I was kind of assuming that at least we would ride Living with the Land and maybe Soarin' if the wait wasn't too bad. Because they're both in the pavilion there.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and yours was okay, it is whatever time it was, like 12:30. It's time for us to go. You said we were going to leave then. At least it's my recollection of it. And anyway, we kind of got in a fight because I was kind of sad that I think I was sad because we weren't going to ride on it. And then I felt miserable because um, a whole bunch of reasons. Like one of them was I was feeling miserable because we were having a fight in the land pavilion. And I don't know. We were grouchy. I think our feet hurt. We were exhausted. Um, Probably dehydrated, both of us to a certain degree. Um,
Yeah, I think that's for sure true.
and I don't know if we were both hungry because we hadn't really eaten that much before that. But uh, anyway, it was just like physical needs and just kind of you were at the end of it with the sensory stuff. And because I mean you had been sitting there that entire time in the land, which the food court area of the land,
Right.
which I mean it's just the open like building with a bunch of people in it. So
Mm-hmm.
um so yeah, we had our rite of passage, our Disney fight right there.
The funny thing about it is at a certain point I got so mad that I stormed off and I was like, I'm just going home. And then I got maybe 2 minutes outside of the pavilion and I was hopelessly lost. I had no idea where I was going. I asked somebody and it was like, well, that's the complete opposite way from where you came in. Uh-huh. And I'm just sitting there on this bench next to like the service exit or whatever it was. I have no idea. Um and I texted you. I was like, uh, can you come find me?
Yeah, and I think I told you to just walk back from where you came
I
and
think
I'd meet you there.
I don't know how.
Eventually, I think we did meet up though. And I
Yeah.
hugged you because I mean,
Mhm.
what was I going to do?
Yeah, of course. Of course. And like it was fine. Like we were fine. You know,
Yeah,
it was just like a moment I think when we were both kind of like conflicting kind of like both like physically and also like conflicting like anxieties about how the trip was gonna go.
yeah.
All kind of came into play.
I remember that I mean, we were fine. We got Diet Cokes, I think, which did
Hmm.
help a little bit. But um I know that walk back for both of us was, at least for me, was not pleasant. And not only because of the sun. Um,
Hmm.
I don't know. I know you were done. You were just wanting to get out of there and get back
I
to the
was a little
room.
bit, yeah.
And I mean, honestly, at that point, I was done too. I was just ready to get out of there and not be in the sun. Um, and what is your recollection of the Skyliner on the way back?
Here's what I started to notice that during the day, for some reason, I think it's different at night, but during the day, you can't go 30 seconds on the Skyliner without the little voiceover giving you a chirpy little fact about, like, you know, so and so, and when this land was bought from when, and, like, and. And I am just like, shut up, shut up, shut up.
Yeah, the whole voiceover that is kind of trying to give the experience of being on a ride and not just a form of transportation. It hits differently when you're tired and you're angry and frustrated and just want to get back to the room. Uh, in the
Hmm.
middle of the day, especially compared to it's fine. It's just it's fun. It's just part of the atmosphere in the morning, but not when you're going back to that room because you're done.
Hmm.
Um, like again, I think I have a much higher tolerance for that than you do.
Yeah, for sure. And you knew what you were. I maybe knew a little bit. Like I had done some research on how to do lists if you're autistic, but also like you had been there and I had not.
Yeah, and that was just part of the Disney experience. The monorail, they do that. I think they do that on the boats as well. Depends on which boats, but they don't do it on the buses because I think it would be people would be really angry because the buses are just transportation. They're not going to try to gloss that one over.
Hmm.
But yeah, so we went back, uh, and I made a very good decision because I think what really helped us was just letting you go back and spend some time in the room, just decompressing and taking a nap. And I got on the Caribbean. Like this was actually a really good thing. With the size of the Caribbean, they have an internal bus loop.
Hmm.
So I just went over to the bus station for the Skyliner, and I just rode the internal bus loop around. Uh, I cooled off. It was air conditioned, and I was the only one on the bus because it was the middle of the day, and no one's riding the bus around the Caribbean resort in the middle of the day.
Hmm.
Um, and it was great. It gave me a chance to kind of decompress too, and I came back to the room. You were asleep, and that's when I decided that I was going to make a trip to the McDonald's that is in the middle of Disney World. Um, because I was starting to get hungry and I thought maybe you were as well. So,
Yeah, a little bit.
and yeah, so that kind of scrapped our plans like the way we were feeling, neither of us wanted to go back to Epcot that night. Because that's what, like, the way we had planned it, like we were going to come back in the middle of the day because we weren't, I knew that how it was going to be. We were going to come back in the middle of the day, and then we were going to go back and we were going to like eat some of the festival, like the Flower and Garden Festival food, like walk around the World Showcase and that,
Hmm.
do some of that stuff. And I knew at that point, no, that was not going to be fun for either of us. It was just going to be a lot. It was going to be walking, and it was going to be still in the sun for a lot of it.
Hmm.
And it was going to be crowded. It's going to be sensory stuff. And so I was like, okay, I still want to go out. I still want to have a nice meal tonight. I still want to have a good experience. Let's see what restaurants were available. And we were able to get a reservation at Beaches and Cream. Uh,
Is that the place with the kitchen sink Sunday?
yeah, that's the place for the kitchen
Yeah.
sink Sunday.
Yeah, that was nice, and we didn't get the kitchen sink Sunday because I don't know if you're getting this vibe from me already, dear listener, but I don't know that I would like all that attention because I bought like a particularly large sundae. Um, but I enjoyed the theatrics of it. I enjoyed it whenever anybody else got it.
Yeah, we we had all of the fun of it because the people right next to us ordered the
Mhm.
kitchen sink. So we had all the fun of the sirens going off and the lights and all of the people coming out and singing their little song and all of that
And
without
every
having to be the center of it
Yeah. Although
and eat like 10,000 or more calories of ice cream too.
Amy's sister, Erin, was texting me saying, "You should get the kitchen sink. You should get the kitchen sink." But I declined. But I enjoyed it. I probably made a joke about that one Simpsons episode where Mo opens up a family restaurant, and every time it's your birthday, you have to like eat the food off of his head or something.
Yeah, Beaches and Cream does have that type of. I mean, it's a nicer place than most family feedback, but yes. And I mean, it has good burgers, and the ice cream we did have, at least what I had, was great.
Hmm.
You had, I don't remember what you had, but you had something that was good too. I think I had a root beer float or something, and
I don't remember what it was, but I remember the food there being very nice. And I remember like also just that was the point where I was like, that was another point where I was like, I had been a little crabby that morning, but like just like the ambiance there, the kind of unashamed corniness of it was really starting to work on me. Like it was like, okay, all right, I like this. I'm not so proud that I don't like a corny family restaurant where you know, where they have like a song that I think we ended up hearing like 4 times while we were
yeah,
there.
we did. It was a busy night for the kitchen sinks. Um, yeah, it was a nice end to the day that at the middle of it was not going so well.
Hmm.
Even though I remember not enjoying the wait because when we ate, when we got finished, we hit the tail end of the Epcot closing rush on the
Right.
Skyliner. So uh, that wasn't fun, but the ride was fine. It was like the Skyliner at night is amazing because you see all the lights, you see the Spaceship Earth all lit up with the
Yeah.
and of course, I mean, Spaceship Earth always looked great, at night, but it's just so much even better once they added the I think the LED lights and do the shows and stuff on it. It's it's just an amazing sight. And then I mean all the lights and everything. Of course, we didn't time it right to be on it when fireworks are going off, but
Right.
it was good. It was a good night. It was a good ending, and so naturally, what better to follow up a day that we started Epcot with the Magic Kingdom on day 2. This is the end of part 1 of our trip to Disney World. Part 2 will feature Animal Kingdom, Hollywood Studios, and a surprisingly delicious finale. If you've enjoyed this Fastcast and would like to watch and or listen to part 2, be sure to like, subscribe, and ring that bell for notifications. Our trip to Disney World is hosted by me, Amy, the Reluctant Disney Adult, and co-hosted by Cora, the Reluctant Disney Wife. As always, Anya was the key creative consultant on this episode. We can't wait to meet you back here for part 2 and hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.